Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. Members, you have your agenda packs in front of you for the matter under consideration today. And members, can I first ask you for elections of the chair, please? Thank you.
Welcome to Licensing Subcommittee. This is a public meeting and members of the public and press are permitted to record on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photography, making an audio recording and providing commentary on proceedings. Please note this meeting is recorded and streamed live, and these recordings are published on the relevant meeting page of the Council's website. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premise must be evacuated immediately and do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency routes are clearly signed, and once you've left the building, the assembly point is in the High Street opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded to use their microphones when speaking. So thank you, and declarations of interest. Now, presentations to this subcommittee are not given under oath. However, I'd like to remind all parties that the highest standards are expected and any deviations from these high standards could possibly influence any decisions for the subcommittee. I'd like to, first of all, identify all persons present and if you're intending to speak or not. So, Jenny?
Jenny Barnes, Councillor for Arboretum, and I'm sure I will be speaking.
Councillor Lucy Hudson, Councillor for Warndon Villages.
Councillor Pat Agar from London.
Georgina Coley, I'm the legal team manager, just to give legal advice to the committee.
Right, Helen, can you identify yourself?
Yes.
Yes.
I think is that on now? Can everybody hear me? Yeah. I'm Helen Cameron. I'm an environmental health officer at Worcestershire Regulatory Services.
Thank you.
I'm Rebecca Gardner. I work at 57 Sidbury, the neighbourhood building.
I'm Fran Fosh, owner of 57 Sidbury, Charlie's Cafe Bar, and neighbour to number 55.
Lynn Denham, Worcester City Councillor for Cathedral Ward, which is where the premises are.
Peter, I'm the owner of the premises for which the application is in front of me.
Morning, Philip Rule, Charter Town Planner and agent for Peterborough Going.
Ilir Fazliu, designated premises supervisor for the premises of the application.
Nikki Jones, licensing officer for Worcestershire Regulatory Services.
Niall McMenamin, principal licensing officer. I'll be presenting the report on behalf of the council this morning.
That each representative and applicant stroke licence holder, they could have been represented by a legal representative at their own expense, and that you're satisfied with the procedures, and the procedures is on page 43 to 46. And that you've got copies. I don't know whether Lucy. And I just remind everybody that it's a maximum of 10 minutes to make any representations unless it's agreed with the chair that an extension should be required. So, Niall? Oh, sorry, yourself. Oh, yes. We're going to adjourn this meeting because we're going to be on a site visit. Just us three, Georgina and Niall. And Georgina would like to say something.
Yes, just to advise everybody here that the purpose of the site visit is for members to understand the layout of the premises. There'll be no discussion between the members themselves on the application, no discussions with anybody on the premises. It's purely the members and officers for them to see what is there. And when they've done that, we will return and the meeting will resume. Thank you.
Just very quickly, was it your intention, Chair, to have access to the building? In which case it may be appropriate for the applicant with the keys or the key holder to come along. Is there somebody on site already?
I will come along, yeah, I'll go along.
Is that appropriate?
If you could come to let us into the building, but obviously we won't be able to have any discussions with you at all or converse with you, which I don't mean to appear rude in any way, but we're not able to do that while we're there. If you just to let us in, thank you.
Yeah. So I'd like to adjourn this meeting and reconvene when we get back. bearing with us. Georgina, do you want to make a start?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the officer will now give his presentation to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everybody. We're here today to consider an application for a variation to a premises licence for a premises called Food and Liquor, which is located at 55 Sidbury in Worcester. Your purpose today, members, is to consider the application and listen to everything you hear today and make a determination on that application. Some background to this case is that on the 10th of February this year, an application was received from Burgoyne Properties Investment Limited for a variation to the premises, as mentioned, Food and Liquor, 55 Sidbury. Officers can confirm that the application contained all of the prerequisite documentation, including the fee, so it was made correctly. Can also be confirmed that the application was advertised in accordance with the requirements of the Licensing Act and the associated regulations, and has also been served on all of the responsible authorities. You'll be aware of the responsible authorities, the police, the fire service, planning, and ward members, and all of the statutory consultees. A copy of the full application, including the plans, is attached to your papers, Appendix 1. So you'll see that on page 5, and you'll see it also on page 22, which are the plans of the premises. They are fairly small, but you have managed to benefit from a site visit this morning to see the premises in its entirety. You need to be aware that the premises currently holds a premises licence issued by the council, and a copy of that is also attached to your papers at Appendix 2. The current licence also authorises the following licensable activities, namely, it's late night refreshment every day from 11 p.m. until 1 a.m. And the sale of alcohol on Fridays and Saturdays from 11 a.m. until 1 a.m. and also on Sundays to Thursdays 11 a.m. until 12. The opening hours of the premises have been indicated as currently are midday until midnight. That is what's on the licence. This variation has applied for the following variation to their existing licence. So it's been submitted on the following grounds. So there is an extension to the roof terraced area. There is relocation of the ground floor bar area. There's the creation of a first floor bar servery, external ground floor seating area, additional water closet facilities, both internally and externally, minor internal configuration at ground floor and first floor, and they are changing the opening hours from 12 midday as currently until midnight for every day to 8 a.m. to midnight every day. This premises was previously known as Primo, and the applicant seeks to make these changes with the opening to the new restaurant under the name of Food and Liquor. So that's the application before you. Members, some background to this case, so that you're aware, in 2019, the premises was subject to a formal premises licence review application submitted by a local resident, and the application cited that the premises was undermining the prevention of public nuisance licensing objective and was also supported by environmental health and two other parties. Now, on that occasion, having heard all of the evidence, the committee made the decision not to take any action at that time. So they listened to all of the evidence that was presented and no changes were made to the licence. So the licence remained as it was. There was also, it isn't cited in the papers, but there was a variation to the premises in 2017 where a number of conditions were added which are reflected on the current licence. So members, in response to the advertisement, so the public notice and the press notice, all of the responsible authorities I've mentioned earlier have been consulted, and one representation has been received from Environmental Health, and Ms Cameron's here today to put forward or amplify her representation. But also, the police did comment on the application and a number of conditions were agreed. So they haven't put forward a formal representation, but on the grant, should the variation be granted today, you will see on page 33 a response from PC Joe Brooks, who was the licensing officer at the time, where there are a number of additional conditions, should the license be granted, which will be attached to the license, and they have been agreed by the applicant already. So, as I say, should the license be granted, all of those conditions will appear on the license when issued. So on those grounds, no representation was put forward by the police. A representation has also been received from Councillor Denham. Councillor Denham's here today, who is the councillor for the Cathedral Ward. Again, objecting to the variation application on the grounds of public safety, public nuisance and the protection of children from harm. And again, Councillor Denham's here and she will address the committee to amplify her objection. So during the consultation period, I've mentioned the police, other persons. So in response to the public notice and the press notice, 5 representations had been received, all objecting to this variation application. And a copy of all of those representations are attached to your papers at Appendix 5. The representations express concerns in relation to increased levels of noise, citing that the variation of the premises licence would undermine the prevention of public nuisance objectives. So concerned about noise and disturbance from the premises. In those representations, you will see that the number of planning matters have also been raised and they've been cited and put forward as information. So yes, they can be noted, but members are here to consider licensing matters today under the Licensing 2003 Act and not planning matters that have already either been dealt with or are being dealt with at the moment. So it's just separating out the two. So whilst they can be noted, and I'm sure the objectors will want to sort of inform members, you must focus on the Licensing Act and the licensing objectives. So in considering this application, you must have regard to the Council's licensing policy, which has been issued under the Licensing Act 2003. And it's available to download. We didn't attach it to the papers because it's a 200-page document. So rather than sort of bulking out the papers, it's there. It is a publicly accessible document. The legal implications, members are obliged to determine this application, as I've mentioned already, with a view to promoting the licensing objectives. And I'll just go through these again so that you're clear exactly what they are. These are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance and the protection of children from harm. So when considering this application, those are the 4 licensing objectives that you must consider. And in fact, the ones that have been cited in the application are certainly public nuisance, the prevention of public nuisance, public safety and protection of children from harm. In making your decision today, you're also obliged to have regard to the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act, and I've mentioned the Council's policy already. You must have regard to the representations that are made by objectors, but also the applicants as well. So you must take on board everything that is said, and then it is your role to determine that information and the evidence that has been put forward. You must take such steps of the, you must take such one of the following steps that you feel appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. Now it says A, B and C. There is in fact A, B, C and D, which I'll come on to. So it's grant the application as requested. Modify the conditions of the license by altering or omitting to them or adding to them. If you feel appropriate that further conditions need to be added, then that is within your gift. Or reject the application in whole or part. Sorry, I did say there was D. No, it's covered by A. Take no action at all. It is within your gift again to, having heard all of the information presented to you today, to not take any action and simply grant the licence. What you must bear in mind, the subcommittee today cannot simply modify the conditions or reject whole or part of the application merely because you consider it desirable to do so. It must actually be appropriate in order to promote the licensing objectives. You must listen to the evidence. If it is appropriate to amend it in line with the information you've heard, then you are permitted to do so. But to simply change or modify the conditions because you feel that you wish, you feel that something should be done is not an option. Any party today, so that's the objectors and also the applicants, can appeal against any decision that's made by this committee this morning. And they do that via the magistrates' courts within 21 days. The hearings should be conducted in accordance with the agreed procedure, which are attached to the papers and everybody has a copy of. So members, you're asked this morning to consider and determine the application for a variation to 55 Sidbury for the premises food and liquor. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
One of the they don't have any papers. Right.
As I said, Chair, happy to answer any questions.
Right. Jenny?
No, I think it's very clear how we've been instructed.
Not at this
Pat?
point, no, not at this point.
Right.
No,
Do you have?
Sorry, it would be nice to hear from.
I'm just about.
Services. No.
Right. Do you have any questions to Niall? Yeah.
With regards to the trading that's been going on at 55 over the weekend, what licensing hours for the off licence have they been, or should they be adhering to?
I can certainly have a look, but it's not relevant to this application, but I would need to go in and have a look. I can maybe tell you shortly.
If there's not a decision they have 10 for the weekend, I'm just curious as to the hours kept, because I just
Okay, I'm not sure it's relevant to this procedures today, but yeah, I can answer it. There's not a problem. I can have a look.
Just to pick up that point, and obviously happy for the officer to look into it, but in terms of the weekend, that was dealt with under a temporary event licence?
It wasn't relevant.
Yeah, yeah. But just to pick that point up for information purposes. Thank you, Chair. Good morning. My name is Philip Raw. I'm a Chartered Town Planner and I've acted for Burgoyne Property Investments for over the past 9 years in securing the planning permissions at this property. As members of the subcommittee are aware, the premises currently holds a licence. Following the construction of the new side extension and roof terrace to the property, the applicant is applying to vary this existing licence so to bring the licence in line with the planning permissions granted and to wholly reflect the terms of these consents. The change in opening time in the morning to 8 AM is so breakfast and coffees can be served, catching this trade. The proposed variations to the licence are set out in the officer's report, and no doubt you will have seen these on your site visit. Your officer has also again set these out for you in his presentation. The premises was previously known as Primo, and the applicant seeks to make these changes with the opening of the new restaurant under the name of Food and Liquor. If I may, I would like to quickly examine some of the main arguments raised by objectors. Councillor Lynn Denham has asked what noise mitigation measures are in place in the outdoor areas. Condition 7 of the planning permission, 21/01127/REM, which was recently granted last year, requires the submission and approval of a roof terrace management plan for customers and patrons. The rationale for this condition is to manage any noise and disturbance to neighbouring and nearby residents. Councillor Lynn Denham has also asked if there are any plans for music or entertainment and do these need to be added to the licence. Part M, Section D of the licence application forms confirm that there will be no live, amplified or ambient music to be played on the external terrace and that there will be no access to external areas, including the WC facilities, these are the outside ones, after 11 PM. This follows condition 5 of the recently granted planning permission. Helen Cameron, Chartered Environmental Health Practitioner for Worcester Regulatory Services, raises an objection. Pertinently, Worcestershire Regulatory Services did not object to the previous planning applications at the property, including for the roof terrace. Reference is made to minimal party wall insulation between the two buildings, which it is said means noise travels into the domestic apartment at number 57 from activities taking place in number 55. This has been reported as a long-standing issue between the properties, an issue that this application to vary the licence does not impact upon any more than the existing situation. Having said that, as part of the recent building works, at the first floor level, a new stud wall with acoustic quilting was installed along the party wall with number 57. On the ground floor, there is an existing stud wall, which is believed to have acoustic treatment already present. Environmental Health wish to see an updated noise assessment and a noise management plan produced for both indoor and outdoor activities. We wonder why this requirement wasn't raised at the planning application stage. Are Environmental Health aware that a noise statement was prepared for the planning application for the roof terrace? And that's a question for them. Worcestershire Regulatory Service agreed with the findings of the noise statement, this being that the noise from the patrons on the proposed roof terrace would not adversely impact on the neighbouring properties, and particularly those at number 57 and numbers 1 to 4 Amber Wharf. The noise statement concluded, existing noise levels in the area are high. The City Walls Road is the main noise source in the area. There is a screening provided on the terrace. A new 2.4 metre wall is proposed has now been constructed between numbers 55 and 57, dealing with any potential overlooking issues too. There are existing similar uses in the area, including the live music associated with the business at number 61 Sidbury, Paradillis. Are Environmental Health aware of the specific conditions of planning permission 21/01127/REM that relate to the roof terrace? As already mentioned, there are conditions 5 and 7, which relate to the 5 PM curfew on outdoor areas and a roof terrace management plan. As members are aware, this building has stood empty now for nearly 3.5 years. The local owners have committed significant resource to bring forward a new venue in Worcester, very much adding to the city centre's food and drink offering and economy. It is therefore respectfully requested that members seek to approve the proposed variations to the existing premises licence. Thank you for your time.
I had the pleasure of visiting your property a very short while ago, and the building standards were very high. One thing that did concern me was the fans at first floor level as you go down the fire escape from the restaurant. They're quite noisy. Is there any way of mitigating that noise?
So the funds or the extraction which you are referring to have been at the exact place since Glass House opened around 20 years ago. So they are at the same place, they are the same noise level, nothing has changed. Maybe the shape of them has changed slightly, but the extraction has been at that place in the last 20 years, while those premises have operated as a restaurant. So in that aspect, noise-wise and the position of the extraction has not changed.
There seem to be new fans on that roof area, and they were quite noisy. So are you sure nothing has been added, or could it be that they're just getting older and becoming more noisy?
The fan is new, but it's at the same position it was before. So the fan is new, and those fans they usually make the similar noise. It would have made the same noise before. Nothing has changed in that aspect, as far as I know.
Councillor, can I come back on that, please? There's two conditions on the planning permissions, because there's two planning permissions that relate to this site. Firstly, the planning consent which was granted back in 2014. There's a condition 11 on there that asks for details to be submitted in terms of external plant, including extract ventilation facilities, air conditioning equipment and noise generation levels, and any noise attenuation measures that have been installed in accordance with these details. That we have a meeting post this with the planning department to basically provide those details for that condition. There is a further condition on the last year's consent, which was recognise you from the planning committee, I believe, with regards to the roof terrace element, and that also picked up a condition 4, which talked about the chiller unit, and again for details and a noise assessment to be undertaken to accompany that. Again, details are being prepared to deal with that condition as well. So in terms of any external plant and noise coming from it, I believe those two planning permissions that are in situ have the necessary conditions attached to them to deal with any concerns.
And have been complied with?
They're currently being complied with. Well, we're currently preparing the information and having those submitted, and hence that's the meeting with the planning department post by this afternoon.
Helen?
Yes, could I just make a point about the alleged noise nuisance from either new or old installation? The fact legally it wasn't a problem in the past doesn't mean to say it couldn't be now, because it's each time on its merits. And I will be going to the meeting this afternoon, so we'll be looking at it then.
Okay. Would you like to question? Sorry. Yes. No. You're.
I would just like to say they're not the same extractor units, they're small box units. They've moved at least 10 foot along the wall towards to Clare Street Founds car park. It's now like a unit. I can show you if you've seen. There must be 2 foot between the extractor unit and the wooden panelling that has in front of the extractor unit as you come off the fire escape, which pushes all the noise to 57 and 59, which also pushes all the food smells of fish into my mother and 59's accommodation. They're not the same extractor units. They were a lot quieter before. We never had a problem. The only problem before with the building was the air conditioning units that a resident at 59 had removed when they first opened as the glass house. So this new noise on the extractor unit is a new noise. It's louder. We can hear it in 57 over our own extractor unit, I may add.
Could I also comment?
Yes.
I had Jonathan Lester come out to look at the planning enforcement, to look at the extractor unit, which is illegal. And he is taking action at the moment to get that removed because it is illegal. They don't have planning permission for it. And it has to be, because of the size of it, it has to be a certain height.
This is more, I'm sorry, this is more.
This is another issue.
It's planning, but it's
planning.
Contradicts what.
It's the
And
noise
you
element,
are
isn't it?
meant to be asking a question rather than a
Yeah,
statement.
sorry.
So can I go to the discrepancies between the off licence and the hours that are trading? So under the guise,
Is that a question?
it will be a question. It sort of leads to the question.
Well,
So if
you've actually got your submission anyway. So perhaps you can, it's.
Question the applicant,
Yes.
So from 11 o'clock when you've got to clear out the outside spaces, because that's the terms of the off licence, 11 p.m. and things off the outside spaces, where do those customers go till 1 a.m., which leads to 2 a.m. kick out, which then leads to up to 3 a.m. staff kick out? Where do all those customers go? If it's the height of summer, internally you're full, then you've got upwards of 100 people that are outside drinking at 11 o'clock. Where do they go till 2 a.m. when it's kick out time after 11 o'clock, 1 a.m. last orders inside? Where does that, what happens to your customers when you're over capacity at that point? It's a,
Every catering business or licensed premises, they have their closing hours. And when they closing hours come up, the customers leave. There is no difference to this one. If there are tables available inside for those customers to sit for further hour or so, they will. If they are not, they will have to leave and go home like they do in any other premises when the closing times come up. There's no different to say King's Head when they close, to say if they happen to be full at 11 o'clock and their closing hours at 11, they'll have to make customers leave so they can go home, or they can go where they wish to go. There's no difference.
You're basing your client base on bums on seats, effectively, so no standing drinking in the premises, any description, so i.e. you've got 100 seats to sit on, but there's nobody going to be standing drinking, which leads to maybe 150 people internally, and then externally you've got this 100 people who want to go in, and you're going to turn away trade for 3 hours. Is what I'm asking.
It's not 3 hours or opening up.
Where do the customers smoke after between 11 p.m., which is a big concern for Sidbury, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. when you're going to effectively shut the doors after your 1 a.m. last orders, because we have an hour's grace. Where do they smoke? Because it's a highly residential area. There's a planning inspectorate's report available. There are multiple flats across the road right next to King Street in Sidbury that have been added, so it's even more residential. I'm just curious, where up from 11 p.m. to 2 p.m. when your customers fully leave the building, where are your smokers going to smoke? Because you have no outside area. You're cutting off access to your external toilets that are now only available to use till 11 o'clock. So from 11, 12, 1 o'clock, serving 2 a.m. kick out, your outdoor toilets cannot be accessed. Nobody, customer-wise, should access the outside ground floor area by the terms of the planning, the off licence. And also, where is the gate on the bottom of the fire escape? I have evidence that staff are now smoking up there, flicking fag butts on our side of the building. If you want proof, it's there, last Friday.
So what this 2 a.m. kick-off, where does that information come from?
Alcohol from 1 a.m. You are given an hour's grace effectively to clear your customers. From my understanding, we're licensed, that's how we work it, and police have never told us differently. We stop serving at 11 o'clock, then we can continue to get rid of our customers within an hour. And then we've got staff, so your staff won't be leaving till gone 2 a.m. That's bottles in bins at 2 a.m, which we've had problems previously with Primo, the Glass House and Bindles. We've also had problems with smoking out in the street, noise and nuisance at 2 a.m. We have your staff on the fire escape across the wall, which is not fully screened for 57's privacy whatsoever. The banisters round the terrace are made of metal. There's no noise alleviation, privacy invasion. If a table of drinks goes off on your terrace, that's going straight onto the pavement. It should be glass at least. Same with the downstairs back garden. It's got metal railed fencing. There have previously been fights in that back garden with the lads from Primo. Drinks go flying, that's going straight onto the road, the pavement. You've got umbrellas on your terrace, 4 left up overnight, have proof. Winging in the wind, 6 lanes of traffic, brollies, where are they going when the wind catches them? There's quite a little bit of little details that need to be addressed. We're in the catering industry, 37, nearly 38 years, successfully run her business. This is not a jealousy issue or anything like that.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but you actually
are able to submit your evidence later. It really is a question. I'm sorry. Would you like
I'm just trying to deduce the questions there, Chair. So I think the first one is in relation to the outdoor area, what happens after 11 p.m. I think that was the main point. And then this question about...
Would you like to do that answer
We'll do that answer. Yeah, I mean, I think.
Because I'd be quite interested in.
Well, I think the way to look at it is, and this was obviously dealt with quite significantly at the planning committee, was that area's got a curfew at 11 p.m. So that ends, that entertainment space finishes at 11 p.m.
How do you expect to clear the area? Because I wasn't at the planning committee.
Yep.
And
Well, there's a
how
man.
do you expect to
Do you want to
clear the area?
talk that through? Because we did deal with that at the planning committee. Well, I think it was raised. In effect, people are very clear that it closes at 11 o'clock and they're politely asked to either leave the premises or, as has been explained, if there is room within the building for people to continue, a free table, etc., then they will obviously have that opportunity to take that table up. But it will be people, as you would do anywhere, whether it's indoors or outdoors, when it comes to a curfew time, politely asked to either move inside if there's space, or if there isn't, then that's the end of their night in the venue. It's how you would manage any indoor outdoor space of this nature. And as I said, under the planning permission, there is a specific roof terrace management plan that needs to be approved and signed off by the local planning authority.
I would also like to point out that our opening hours are clearly stated till midnight, 12 o'clock, not 2 a.m. That lady stated. So our opening now hours are till 12.
Till 12 o'clock?
Yes,
And that's when last orders.
yes. So currently we are allowed to take last orders at 12 o'clock. Yeah, we might choose to do that earlier. We have to all understand that we are predominantly trying to trade as a restaurant. We are not a nightclub or a late night bar. We're not intended to trade like that. You did see the place, the way it's set up. I regret not showing you in the kitchen because there are 5-6 chefs working in the kitchen. We are aiming to trade predominantly as a restaurant, and I believe you did see that. But nowadays you do have to have the opportunity for people to have a drink without food, so you can apply to as many as you can in order to have a successful business. And this is what we aim in, mostly food, daytime trade. This is what I mean, if we were aiming to trade as a club, nightclub, late night, we would not extend open hours from 8 o'clock in the morning to serve coffee and brunch and breakfast and all those things.
No.
Yeah, Chairman, just one question really. It's for the applicant. Sorry?
I would like to add something to this one, actually. I am a DPS, designated premises supervisor for the premises. I have been running licensed premises in Worcester for nearly 20 years. I did hold many events with the council itself. I did hold a pop-up cafe in the courtyard, in the Guildhall, myself. I did organize a gin festival for 2 years in Guildhall when I had 2,000 people each time. I've been running bars and restaurants licensed in Worcester for, like I said, almost 20 years. Never in my 20 years experience have I had a licensing issue, public nuisance, or any issues license related while I've been DPS in those premises in the last 20 years. And I can prove that. So I just want to explain that we are aiming to be a very responsible operator. And certainly we're not a nightclub like we've been portrayed to. We are predominantly a restaurant.
Yes, I need to think how I'm going to sort of ask this question. It is a question for the applicant. It's really on clarity on the existing licence, and it may benefit members because the licence is a little confusing, the one that is there already, because it gives an indication that the premises is open from 12 till 12 midnight, but then of course licensing permissions are until 1 a.m. Now, of course, it's been raised by the objectors that it goes on till 2. So it's really just an explanation around those licensing hours as they stand and the rationale behind them, the intention, because they are going to stand with the new area. I'm aware of planning restrictions, not for this committee, which is probably leads to the opening hours. So it's really just how the business is intending to run in and around those hours. So you have licensing hours until 1 a.m., but you have opening and closing times at 12 midnight. Did that make sense? Yeah, thank you. Really just for the members, for your benefit, to understand how the premises works.
Could I, sorry, Chair, could I just ask for clarification? On,
Could we just wait for the question to be answered first, please?
Yeah, oh, I thought you finished, sorry.
You can serve alcohol till 1 a.m, but you've got a opening time up to midnight. I think what he's saying is, do you want the two to basically be consistent with one another?
Sorry, just to come back. So for members, the opening hours are a guide. They're not enforceable under the Licensing Act.
Right.
So on the license, they are there for information. So when you're considering opening hours on the license, it's not actually enforceable by the committee. It's the licensable activities which are enforceable. So I think that's probably the background to the question, is how do you intend to operate in accordance with your license, or should a license be granted?
Do you want to pick this one?
Like I stated previously before, our opening hours will be till midnight. And that's when we'll be trading. We would probably be very happy to reduce the licensing hours also till midnight, providing no other conditions are changed in our application. Just to reassure that the 12th, the midnight is the latest we can serve alcohol to. We're happy to compromise in that aspect, providing no other conditions hopefully are not changed in our application.
Okay, and that's a matter for the chair and obviously members. Thank you.
yeah, it was just really for clarity, for which might help the members decide. You said you're primarily a restaurant. At what time is your kitchen going to close for last food orders?
Last food orders probably in a region between 9 and 10 o'clock. That's to be decided in a line with business. How does that go?
And the thing about capacity of moving people through the premises when the outdoor area is closed, what is your internal capacity at the moment?
We can sit about 115 people inside it.
There was a comment made about the use of the fire escape and smoking, which I would have thought would be not something that employees dealing with food should be doing on the premises. But is there any way that you can enforce that there shouldn't be smoking on that fire escape?
Smoking where, sorry?
By staff as they finish their shift on the fire exit. It was commented that that is happening at the moment.
We can certainly have this within our rules, regulations, and management plan of staff and customers to be stated with staff training and everything else. So there's no smoking will be in the fire escape area there. That can be very easily sorted. Yes.
Is there a designated smoking area after 11 o'clock?
I think everything seems to be based that at 11 o'clock they're going to...
By that I mean after the external area is closed.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. We obviously can be no different to any other premises who has no external smoking area. We don't feel we are responsible or need to take care where someone who smoke can smoke. We are no different to any other restaurant, any other licensed premises that has no outdoor area but has smokers inside.
any other question? Georgina? Helen? Or actually, the one person I haven't is Lynn.
Thank you. I mean, as members can tell, there is a very lengthy history here, and it's, yeah, since the time I've become a councillor, I've actually spent quite a bit of time with this issue and different permutations. And since the premises at 55 changed ownership and changed from being an antique shop to different permutations, it's a very lengthy and very complex history, and it's quite difficult. It's intimately entangled with planning and licensing. My question, and it kind of picks up Becky's point and what the gentleman has said. So there is a planning requirement for a roof terrace management plan. We don't have that management plan in front of us today in terms of licensing. So managing that roof terrace in licensing terms and managing potentially drunken customers, safety, around fire safety, around how that space is used. How will that work in licensing terms, please?
The aim of management plan for the terrace is to make sure no public nuisance and customers are safe. They leave the premises at required times. Those are the main objectives of that plan. We cannot have that plan currently finished or detailed without committee making a decision about the license, because depending on what decisions about the license are made, that plan will need to be changed and adjusted towards it.
I mean, perhaps if I could suggest that members give consideration to the requirement of the safe management of that space as a licensed premises, and you've had the benefit of seeing it. Thank you.
Have you any questions? Well, this is the question. This is questions to the applicant. You can read out your statement in a few minutes.
To ask, after these inebriate customers have spent their time in his premises, how he will quietly get them to leave, because it just sounds impossible.
I've stated before, we are no different to any other restaurant in Worcester, and there are hundreds of them. Our customers will leave the same way they leave in any other restaurant. I'm not sure what is the procedure of a customer to leave a restaurant quietly. In which planning or licensing is this required? So I'm going to state again, our customers will leave exactly the same way they leave in 200 or 300 other restaurants in Worcester that are operating currently. No different to that.
Could I continue with this question? That this venue is not like any other venue in Worcester. It has multiple bars, it has multiple objectives, and I can't see how they will be able to employ the amount of staff they will need to get that number of customers quietly out of their building at a certain time.
I mean, isn't it potentially a public nuisance if there are large numbers of rowdy people exited from the premises, as it were, or as to how that's managed?
not sure what more the operator can say. I think it's coming back to that. What I'm listening is very much the premise is a restaurant. I think we need to be clear that we're not what's happened before, how the premises has been used before. I think that's clouding opinion in terms of what's being proposed today and what the restaurant is. You've obviously had the benefit of visiting the premises. You can see how it's set out, and I think past experiences are perhaps clouding judgments on how this is going to be operated going forward.
Thank you. I was on the planning committee that discussed this, and I somehow forgot that the position of the doorway to the restaurant was changing from the middle of the premises to the other side of the premises, almost by the traffic lights. Was this partly to help with that situation, or have I got that wrong?
Wow. It clearly does. Well, whether it was intentional or not, I think it was. It's a better use of the space, but you make the clear point, councillor, that it does improve the situation because it moves the entrance from the premises, in and out of the premises, further away from the residential properties, particularly at number 57. So whether it was by design or not, in that regard, it certainly does improve the situation from a separation perspective.
Now a fire door. Purely.
So for the last 15, 20 years, the main entry to the restaurant has been right on the main road, very close to Lady's property. That entrance will be used now only as a fire escape. And the main entrance will be around the corner by the traffic lights, further away from the property, much further away, which you did all see, yes. In top of that, the main bar, when you enter the building, has been right next to her property when you come in, and that has been moved further back, which now it has numerous hallways and kitchens in between the bar and the next door's property. So it's actually further away, much further away than the one that used to be there before.
It's much better because the original door is quite loud opening and closing, and then the next property, we still actually hear your phone.
Any other questions?
Jenny?
No, I think I've run out.
Pat?
Thank you.
Georgina?
If I may, Chair, I think that members may want clarity regarding compliance with the existing condition 2, which requires the provision of a gate at the bottom of the fire escape. It may help members to know whether or not that is to be provided. So it's condition 2 of the existing licence, which says the provision of a gate at the bottom of the fire escape of a height so as to prevent customer access from the garden. Page 27 of the officer's report.
That's still there, is that not?
It isn't there at the moment, but we can put something up.
Yeah. Okay. Chair, just been informed it isn't there currently at the moment, but that can be reinstated. If
It's an existing condition and reinforcing that the applicant is to comply with that. Thank you.
okay.
Chair, no questions, but I was asked a question earlier in relation to temporary event notices. I found the answer. It was a temporary event notice they were operating under, and the hours were 11 AM until 11 PM. It may assist when making their presentation, so that's just for clarity. But no question, further questions of the applicant.
Right. So, Helen, do you want to make your presentation? Then number 57, and then finally Lynn. Okay?
Yes, a number of items that I put in my original objection have been clarified during the course of the morning, so I may make some further comment. Our objection was put in based on the historical record of known late night problems and a need to limit activities on the premises to primarily a restaurant as per the original planning permission, which is not necessarily the current planning permission, but one that goes further, and the various licensing conditions that are being posed over a period because of impact on local residents. I think some of those items have been addressed, and it may be a matter of wait and see. And the issue that's always been a problem with determination of nuisance has been the lack of noise insulation between the two old buildings, which has also been referred to by the applicant. There's obviously no recent history of nuisance at the premises because it was not, again, as stated by the applicant, been operating since 2019. So there is no immediate record. And no statutory nuisance notice was served under the Environmental Protection Act previously because of the potential impact on the visitors, and by agreement with the complainants, we tried to informally resolve it with both parties through meetings and discussions. Slightly disappointed that the applicant didn't come to us to discuss some of the issues. I cannot guarantee that Worcestershire Regulatory Services would have seen the planning applications. We do not see all planning applications by agreement with the local authority, but I can only refer that matter back to check. So you've referred to various items, which is why I raised the issue of the noise assessment, etc., in the record. It's because so I mean, there's no objection from environmental health to there being a license. This is a matter of the hours of the license, and it's already been referred to by Niall and others that some of the confusion arises because there's different hours between planning conditions and the actual operating of the license, which I think has confused the applicant and perhaps the objectors over a period of years. The issue of public nuisance and noise is one that the licensing authority and the police would have to deal with if there was public nuisance on the streets, although environmental health would deal with any issues on the terrace or on the immediate premises. In terms of the smoking issue, just to clarify, it's environmental health that enforces the Health Act with regard to smoking on the premises. And obviously fire safety is down to the fire authority. I think the other point that I'd just like to raise, I mentioned an assessment. Obviously the new layout may alter noise transmission. There's probably not been enough people on the premises at the moment to assess what that is going to be like. But the noise management plan has been referred to, which is something that I also asked for, so that we can work jointly to try and resolve it in some form or another.
Any questions?
Thank you.
No questions.
Georgina?
I would,
Lynn? The applicant, sorry.
I would like to have an environmental health. Did they objected when the premises two-door survey, which is called paradiddles, applied for the license, because they hold the license to play live music inside and outside the premises, including their garden, up till 11:30 at night. So I would be curious to know if environmental health did object at the time when they applied for that license.
Niall? No. Would you like to reply to the applicant? All right, I'm sorry. Helen?
Not that I'm aware of, but there have been no issues equally that I'm aware of at paradiddles. I think one conversation has been held with them over the years, but of course it's an earlier finishing time.
Okay, yep.
Sorry. During lockdown, they eased a lot of the regulations so that paradiddles were then allowed to move outside of their premises with their music. Their actual planning permission says that they can only do music inside with the doors and the windows shut. And yes, and close at 11. But as I say, that the regulations would ease during lockdown
So outside.
because so that people could move outside to get space between them. So that was
So that's no relevance to any of the, yeah, it's no relevance, really. And they adhere to they turn their music off at 11 p.m. No one complains.
No questions for environmental health, thank you.
And the applicant?
Questions?
Yeah?
I want to ask the parties involved, that do they know, as well as the committee, that our current license does not, and I state does not, allow us to play live music or DJs inside the premises. So the current license we've put through, we are not asking for live music or DJ or entertainment inside the premises, which only proves our statement before that we are aiming to trade mostly as a restaurant.
I think we've gathered, certainly we've gathered that information. Any more questions for environmental health? If not, then would you, number 57, I'm sorry, Fran, I've completely forgotten your name. Right, would you like to make your submission?
okay.
Charlie's Calf.
Charlie's Calf, right, yes.
Right. In 2006, permission was granted for change of use. There was no BS 7913 report done at any time which deals with the impact on other buildings and the environment. I would like to make the committee aware of restrictions to the licence on the original permission for change of use. Condition 9 states to maintain the residential amenity of the surrounding residential development in accordance with policy BE1 of the City of Worcester Local Plan 2004. Condition 10 states, the restaurant licence hereby approved states the premises shall not open between 12:30 a.m. But it's relevant to
I think we could allow Mrs. Fosh to make her representation, but at the end I will be advising members to disregard any planning matters.
yeah. So clause 10, the restaurant licence hereby approved states the premises shall not open between 12:30 a.m. and 7 a.m. on any given day. In other words, they have to close at 12:30 a.m. at the latest. Also to ensure the premises are open during normal retail hours so as to prevent dead frontage in accordance with the policy CC5 and CC7 of the City of Worcester Local Plan 2004. On the 21st of October 2009, an application was applied for a variation to condition 10. This was to change the licensing hours of the premises to close at 1 a.m. Friday to Saturday and 12:30 a.m. on Sundays. This appeal was turned down. Reasons given, the main issue with the licence is the effect of the proposal on the living conditions of the occupiers of nearby residential properties, particularly in terms of noise and disturbance. Should I have to take this to court, I'm assured by Jonathan Lester, Planning Enforcement, that original plans plus all conditions still stand. Any new tenants have to honour these conditions. Licensing is overruled by planning. With regard to the off-licence conditions granted on the 20th of September 2017, there are 7 conditions which were attached. During the last rebuild, I was denied a party wall surveyor, so at great expense to myself, I employed one. He was totally ignored by Mr. Burgoyne and the builder. This breaks the law regarding the 1996 Party Wall Act. Parts of the new build are now fully attached to my garden wall, which has caused untold damage to my Grade 2 listed wall and building, as well as my daughter's car, which is parked daily in my long yard. This building at 55 would now appear to represent a nightclub / sports bar. Re-soundproofing. I would like to state that all the way through the build, I could hear every screw, drill, nail going into their property. Early one morning, I came down because I could hear a lot of noise, and I walked out, went into their property, and the guy was plastering, I think he was Polish. But I could hear that. He told me this wall is soundproofed, but I could hear him from my bedroom upstairs plastering the wall. And yes, and I can still hear their phone ring. That's it.
Any questions?
Could you just clarify about the sports bar aspect that you've just mentioned?
Yes. Sorry. I think they've had 7, maybe more TVs delivered because they came to us because they couldn't gain access. So we had to hold them until somebody was next door. That's more along the lines of sports club rather than fine dining restaurant.
They certainly weren't evident when we went round, so
Yes,
we went everywhere.
Pat?
I think, Fran, you said that licensing is overruled by planning. I think that's not quite how we see it. And I'm sure that our legal representative, George, here will clarify that. But I just wanted to say that they're separate regimes, as you know, and that they have completely separate ways of looking at things. So whereas planning looks at the amenity of neighbours, how it affects neighbours, what we're looking at, I think what you're looking at primarily here, is the licensing objective that says the prevention of public nuisance. So that's really what we're focusing on here.
Georgina?
Yeah, that's completely correct. One does not overrule the other. So if there's and there can be a conflict because you may find that you've got a licensing objective that is met, but it might not meet a planning condition, and therefore if a planning condition was being breached, that would be a matter for planning enforcement. If a licensing condition was being breached, that would be a matter for licensing, but they can be different. One doesn't overrule the other. That may seem a disparity, but that is the way the statutes are, and neither one is contingent on the other.
Helen? Do you have any questions? Lynn? The applicant? So we've really, and Lynn. Yeah, and then Lynn.
It's the 8 AM opening, which would actually contradict the conditions set on this building's trading hours. If they open at 8 AM, what time would the chef be in? Which means what time would the extractor go on? But it also leads to the fact that the building can't trade before 11 AM anyway, because of the terms set within the planning conditions for the use of the building. That's what I'd like to know, is when do the chefs come in to turn the extractor fan on and start trading?
It may assist for clarity that although it is a separate regime, the planning permission permits the premises to be open from 7 AM until 12:30 AM. It's condition 10 of the 2006 permission.
I've actually written that condition 10. Actually written that. It's confusing all of it, isn't it?
So no, I'd actually written down your comment that it would be closed from 12:30 AM until 7 AM. Lynn?
Thank you very much. As I said, there is a very lengthy history between with the business at 55 and a number of neighbours. I'm speaking on behalf not just of one resident that's here, but also other residents. So whether you had opportunity on your site visit. So there are houses by the canal, and there are houses across people living the other side of City Walls Road. I think you also need to be mindful that that part of town looks different in the daytime to the night time and to the evening time. So, you know, levels of traffic are very much less. Unfortunately, because of the lengthy, complicated history, there is negligible goodwill, unfortunately, with regard to the business, and there's been little done to mitigate that or to improve relations with neighbours. So there is enormous amount of cynicism, unfortunately, that, you know, what is said in the papers actually is likely to be delivered on the ground every day, because past history, unfortunately, maybe with other management, has indicated otherwise. You've heard a great deal about the confusion between licensing and planning, and thank you for the clarification. I would ask, you know, given that this is an application for a variation of a license, whether this might be the opportunity to at least align the two regimes and kind of reduce the confusion going forwards. You know, it's my understanding it's whichever of the most restrictive conditions, be they by planning permission or licensing permission, is the one that holds. It would be good if it was, this is an opportunity to try and align them. Which covers the main thing. Public safety is absolutely key, as I think, you know, I alluded to. These are new premises, you know, with a raised terrace, with stairs and so on, and actually, you know, what is the public safety with regard to that, and the risk assessments, bearing in mind, you know, customers will be under the influence of alcohol. I don't know, you know, with regard to the plan that we have here, what level of detail is required for licensing purposes, you know, and I haven't had the benefit of going round on the site, but are the plans that we've got amongst our papers exactly the same as what is physically been built there at the moment? And if they are different, is that of relevance for licensing purposes? Prevention of public nuisance, yes, it is on the corner of a busy road junction. It is close to a number of residential properties, as I've indicated, and the level of soundproofing and what noise mitigation is actually in place is really important. I hear what the applicant has said in terms of some mitigation going into the building wall. It kind of remains to be seen to some extent as to what, it remains to be seen how effective that is, and depending on, you know, the level of noise generated by customers. It's reassuring that there is no application for music or entertainment. That is really important. Because the premises have opened early with the benefit of a temporary event notice, it has given us a kind of a taster for how it might operate. It is a very, first of all, it looks a bit like Blackpool illuminations, which I'm not sure we were necessarily expecting. There's quite a lot of lights there. It is also a very open, it's a very public space two-way. So, you know, people sitting at the traffic lights can see straight into the restaurant, and vice versa. And I don't know, you know, whether there is potentially some concern, you know, with regard to what is visible either way, really, and the potential for public nuisance, you know, depending on the kind of customers or the kind of events within the restaurant, and, you know, children outside or children inside. That I just kind of, it's a very, very visible space in both directions for the public looking in and for customers looking out. Thank you.
Nick? Oh,
I'm still contemplating.
no.
Chair, just to confirm, I think it was raised about the plans and the application. Does it bear resemblance to the actual building? Having benefited from the site visit, and I think you will see as well, on page 22, it's an accurate reflection of the premises and how it's laid out. I can't see any discrepancies with the plans that have been submitted on 22, so it's identical to how the building is, as far as I can see. Yeah.
Thank you for that reassurance. Yes. Can I ask the question? Yes. Well, just a sec.
After that comment, would you say, Lynn, that if the light levels on the terrace were reduced, so that there'd be less light going into neighbouring properties, that would be a solution?
Yes, potentially. I think, you know, the level of light, there's a balance, isn't there? The level of lighting and safety for customers. There is an awful lot of lighting there, and it is very bright. I don't know what time that lighting goes off, but it's about a business being mindful and being a good neighbour, and there hasn't been a history of being a good neighbour. If we can put some conditions in to promote being a better neighbour, that would be helpful.
I just want to ask a question. I'm not sure, but off-license sales, are you going to be selling any of those? So, i.e., alcohol that's taken away from the premise?
Alcohol only to be consumed on the premises, not off the premises.
No off-sales.
No, just to confirm, it's on page 17, section I, that they tick the box, that it's on the premises only.
Pat? Georgina?
I need to make.
Helen?
Just on light pollution, that is another matter, would be a matter for environmental health. It's covered under an amendment to the Environmental Protection Act, and obviously any judgment would be made on the time and obviously existing light conditions in the city centre, because it's very different from being in a rural area. But one would expect certainly probably some reduction in light levels from, say, 11 o'clock. Yeah, under the World Health Organization, things about sleeping hours, 11 to 7 a.m. Yeah.
Sorry, it just occurred to me with regard to lighting and so on, closeness to the canal and that as a sort of wildlife corridor, would that become relevant potentially?
Would not be anything to do with environmental health. We only deal with matters relating to people. You'd have to take that up with the Wildlife Organisation.
space, would it not be an expense, but the ground floor garden is very open with railing, which in a public liability setting safety, if there is a fight to ensue, which God forbid there is, the railing is very exposed. So from a noise perspective, if there was a brick wall on the ground floor garden, it would contain a lot of noise within the within the garden space, instead of projecting it to the flats across the road and those to the rear. Does that make sense? So at the moment, Mr. Bergen's got a lovely railing, but at this, from a noise perspective, I said it's sort of going on what Lynn said. Would that not be something that would be worth considering that then leads to light pollution filtering if you've got a brick wall and sound?
I don't think these are necessarily a matter for the licensing committee to consider, and we're here to consider the licensing application, not these other matters.
Noise being projected into the residents across the road and in the rear in general, and also it would alleviate some light.
I think we just need to bear in mind here, members, that you need to look at the evidence in front of you today when considering this application. Thank you.
Full on-off license. On sale of alcohol from 10 a.m. to 11 in the evening, and off sales of alcohol the same hours, 10 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. Now, at the present moment, I don't open at night, but should I open at night or sell my property and somebody else open at night, that means that my customers will leave my premises and possibly go next door. So that will bring more trade to them, but that will bring more people out on the pavement after 11 o'clock at night. So that is added to.
Sorry.
No, sorry.
I'm sorry.
No.
The applicant.
I have a question.
Yep.
For Lynn, you mentioned maybe introducing some conditioning towards the lighting. Have a condition of what time lights to be switched off or turned down will contribute toward the safety in the terrace, fire escapes, risk assessment, and so on and so on. How can, if there's a condition license, certain lights to be switched off at a certain time, what if access is needed? Does that comply with our risk assessment? How do you think that can actually contribute towards safety of customers and staff with less lighting?
Thank you. Well, I'm not a professional, and I did say it needs to be a balance between the needs of customers and the needs of neighbours. We have professional advisors, we have officers in the room. You obviously have your own professional background. It is about, from my perspective, I'm an elected representative of local people, and it's about getting the balance of a business being a good neighbour and being mindful that you have people living right next door to you.
I've got a couple of questions for Councillor Denham. It's quite nice to ask her some because she's asked me many over the years. In terms of we're talking about light pollution, we're talking about noise pollution. This is on the adjacent boundary to the City Walls Road that we're talking about here, which, as we know, is the biggest noise pollutant and no doubt the biggest light pollutant in the area. So it doesn't follow that what we're talking about here is because of the City Walls Road. Clearly that's the biggest contributor, and you're all concerned about the building's impact on that road, which, as we know, is a busy road. The other point I want to make, and it's been raised all the way through by the objectors, is, are we in agreement that the operators now of the new premises are new? There's nothing, they have no linkages in terms of the operator to what's happened in the premises in historic years.
Thank you. As I said, City Walls Road at midnight is a heck of a lot quieter than it is at 9 a.m. You know, it varies throughout the day, and there is a difference between, you know, background noise and then additional noise on top of that. So the background noise of City Walls Road varies throughout the 24-hour period. So any additional noise from the business, you know, is much more prominent at night when the road is quiet, which is, I think I said in the thing. You are I take at face value, if it's new management, it's new management, and we hope that the new management operates better than the several iterations of management that there have been in the past. Unfortunately, bitter experience to date is that Fran and Becky have had the most appalling time in trying, in having to live next door to number 55 and everything that's happened there. The fact that, you know, Charlie's Cafe is closed today, Fran's losing a day's business in order to be here. She's had to spend a great deal of money and time, including on legal advice. This has been incredibly stressful for both of them. She won't say that, but if I can say it on their behalf. We hope that the future is better. Experience of the past since the property was bought by Mr. Burgoyne, I'm afraid to say that has been very, very difficult for the neighbours, as a councillor, and actually with a number of agencies.
But in terms of the management, my question was, the new management is not linked in any way to the events that have taken in the past.
I have no idea.
Well, it's idea. It's new management. So they couldn't, the answer to the question is no, they haven't been linked to those in the past. Mr. Burgoyne is the owner of the building. There has been managers of the building or operators of the building. This is a new operation. And a big point here is that the past events and, you know, however, you know, and I'll take what you've said on that basis, shouldn't be used to stigmatise the new proposals and the new operation for the property, which has had a significant resource, you know, put into it.
Okay, any more questions of Lynn? If not, then perhaps we'd like to get the summing up. So if I can let the applicant, no, it's the licensing officer, but also I think the closing, it's the closing statements of the if anything, yeah?
Licensing officer first.
Licensing officer first and then.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to sum up, you are here today to consider an application for a variation of a premises licence to 55 Sidbury Food and Liquor. You've had the opportunity now to see the application. You've also had the opportunity to visit the site and see how it reflects in relation to the plans and the application itself. You've also had the opportunity to hear from a number of individuals who have objected to the premises licence and the applicant themselves, how they are mitigating any concerns raised. So you are asked, having heard all of the information today and having heard all the evidence presented, although there is some caution around new evidence which has been presented today, which wasn't in original submissions, you need to focus your mind on the licensing objectives and how the application impacts on the licensing objectives. There's been a lot of talk of planning today and planning conditions, but you must bring it back to the Licensing Act and the 4 licensing objectives which I informed you of in my presentation originally. So how this application impacts on the licensing objective, whether it upholds the objectives or in line with the representations presented, whether it would actually undermine the licensing objectives, those doing prevention of public nuisance, the protection of children from harm, prevention of crime and disorder, and public safety. So yes, you're asked to consider the application in line with the Council's policy, in line with the statutory guidance issued by the Secretary of State, and determine the application with the options available to you in the report pack. That's my summing up for you, councillors.
Thank you, Chair. You've heard from the new operator and his impeccable track record in the city over the past 20 years. You've heard from the objectors, again, reiterating your officer's comments there, which appears to be focused on more planning matters and historic events that have taken place at the premise, not the proposals that are before you today. And to reiterate really what I said in opening in terms of the fact that this building's been stood empty for nearly 3.5 years. Local owners have committed significant resource to bring it forward as a new venue in the city, very much adding hopefully to the city centre's food and drink offering. And we respectfully request members seek to approve the proposed variations to the existing licence.
I'd like to ask a question at this stage, for clarity.
I don't have an objection if you wish to ask a question of clarity.
For clarity, please, it was mentioned that are you or are you not going to be putting up television screens within your premises?
Absolutely not. We have never ordered any televisions. We're not planning to. I have no idea whatsoever about TV things. No.
And the second question is, once the terrace is closed for the public at 11, do you intend to turn off the outside lights?
The outside lights will need to be on for safety purposes. If staff needs to have access to it, we do have also a second fire escape that goes through the terrace. I strongly believe they need to stay on. The street lighting is on anyway on City Walls Road, so I cannot see how can they be any issue whatsoever.
So you're not even prepared to dim them at that stage?
I believe this is a health and safety question. Really, I will not be able to. I will not be able to. Or main priority will be for us to have enough lighting for access and to be safe fire escapes.
I think without getting into the detail, if the lights can be dimmed but still meet the requirements for a lit fire escape, then we can meet those requirements.
Sorry, Chair. I don't have anything major to add to what the licensing officer already said. Just to remind members that this is an application to vary a premises licence. The premises already has a licence, and the licensing objectives are paramount. Consider the evidence in front of you, not the new evidence. Disregard planning matters and other matters that fall under different regimes. Taken on board the comments of all of the objectors and also the comments of objections, people who aren't here today, their objections still give the same weight even though they haven't been here to attend. You need to take that all into account and decide whether you wish to grant the application, modify any conditions or refuse the application.
Right, so I'd like to then adjourn this committee hearing and to enable us as the subcommittee to deliberate in private. So I'd like to, so if you could leave the room. representation made by the applicant and the objectors, we are minded to grant we have decided to grant the variation to the premise licence with the conditions agreed with the police as per page 34 and 35, with the additional agreement of the conditions on page 20, which is no live, amplified or ambient music to be played on the external terrace, and no access to external areas, including the WC's facilities, after 2300 hours, plus the existing conditions, and also the amendment to the licensing hours to finish at 12 o'clock as volunteered by the application in order to satisfy the licensing objectives. A written decision will be issued in 5 working days. So we grant the application. So thank you and good luck. Yep.